Yeah. G'day guys, welcome back to Millionaire by 50. Today's lessons from the book video is going to center around Robert Kiyosaki's The Cashflow Quadrant. Now I know that we touched on Robert Kiyosaki a little bit last week, but to be honest, these two books are the first finance books that I read, and they pretty much created the framework for this whole Millionaire by 50 thing. So I thought, what better way to start the channel off than to walking you through the first lessons that I learned, right? We're all on a level playing field here. And with that being said, we're going to dive just straight into it because there is a lot to say on this one. So lesson one, what is the cash flow quadrant? So this is the first lesson I took from the book. Basically, the cash flow quadrant is a diagram that divides society into 4 different sections. Now, each section is characterized by where they get their income from. So as you can see up on the screen here, we've got E, which stands for employees, S that stands for people that are self-employed, B that stands for business owners, and I that stands for investors. That by itself probably doesn't tell you too much. It's really gets its meat from the narrative that Robert illustrates throughout his book through his various analogies. So I'm going to do an analogy of my own in describing it. This is lesson 2, the narrative of the cash flow quadrant. Now look, I used to do film studies, okay? I used to be a film and television production student, and I made my own short films, and they were god awful.
So ghastly and putrid and vomit inducing.
That doesn't stop me from loving film though, right? So the easiest way I can explain it is like this. In the first act of every film, we have act 1. This is when our protagonist is in a place of comfort, in a place of safety, and they've got this routine going, okay? Now, according to Robert, this pretty much sums up what he characterizes employees to be, okay? So employees value safety, they value a routine, and they are very, very risk averse. Risk is the enemy of an employee, and this could be because, you know, they have a family, they have a mortgage, they have things to lose, and naturally the more that you have to lose, the more risk averse you're going to be. Now after that, we move into act 2 of the film, which is when our protagonist steps outside their comfort zone. They go into an unfamiliar environment where there's a lot of danger and there's a lot of uncertainty. As you can probably predict, this sums up what Robert characterizes as people that are self-employed. So people that are self-employed, normally they don't really mesh that well with authority. They see the value that a business outputs and they say, hey, we can do a better job than that, and they set off an adventure to do so. Now, people that are self-employed, they are not as risk averse as employees. However, they are definitely still limited by it. So say for example, I'm a carpenter and I'm working 60 hours a week on my own business. You know, my quality is fantastic, and as a result, I find my business growing, right? It's just a lot of hours I need to put into that. Now, the problem that self-employed people need to overcome, according to Robert, is what if one day I decided I wanted to take a break from being self-employed? I wanted to take a break from my carpentry business and go to the Bahamas. I step away from being self-employed. What happens to my business? It collapses, right? If I'm not there to consistently deliver that quality, to work on it 60 hours a week, then it falls apart. So in order to meet that problem, in order to solve it, the likely solution is usually to get somebody else in to do the work for you. Now, for a self-employed person, this is a risk that they are unwilling to take, because the risk is if you get somebody else in to do the work for you, what if that quality drops? To the self-employed person, if the quality drops, then that means the reputation of the business drops. And if the reputation of the business drops, you're not going to get customers and the business is going to be dead in the water. That sends self-employed people back to being an employee, which is where they came from, or, you know, even worse. To them, that's a problem that they overcome. And if they can, then we make it to act 3, which is when our protagonist wins in their goal. That's when they save the prince from the castle. That's when they, you know, save the world. This is basically when a self-employed person becomes a business owner. They have systemized their process so as that anybody can do it, and the quality drop is going to be minimal. So then they hire several employees to just replicate what they do while they take a break and they step back from it. Then the business that they've created generates a passive income for the business owner. All the while they're off doing, you know, their own thing. They could be maybe making movies, they could be skiing or exploring the world, or I don't know, maybe, what is it people do nowadays? Maybe they go to the fire festival. I mean, is that still on? Or that supports the business that they've created supports them in their future endeavors. Now, for everybody that's an employee, that's got a family, a house, a mortgage, a car, and the loans up the shitter, you know, this is probably all doom and gloom. Now we come to the stage where it's a plot twist.
That's impossible!
I did promise this to you, okay? So a plot twist is investors, okay? You can be in any section of the cash flow quadrant and still be an investor. You can be an employee and still be an investor. And the thing is, if you invest in the right assets, then these assets can replicate the passive income that businesses give to business owners. Sure, it's not going to be as much money as business owners get. Sure, it's probably going to take a lot longer, but here's the trade-off. It's a lot less risky, yeah? There's like basically no risk aside from whatever you can afford to invest in the first place. You're not risking your house, you're not risking your car, you're not risking your family, any of that, right? You invest in assets over time, they grow, and they give you money back. So that's lesson 2, guys, the narrative of the cash flow quadrant. We're gonna move straight on to lesson 3, which is the system, man. And this is just another perspective that Robert employs to look at the cash flow quadrant. Basically, he looks at it as a system wherein E's work for the system, S's are the system, B's own a system, and I's invest in a system. Now, the reason why it's important to look at this as a system is by understanding where you fit in the system, you can better understand how you're going to exploit it, all right? And you can better understand how you can sort of navigate within your own little system. So I love movies and I love video games as well. I'm going to employ a video game analogy to explain this one. And in terms of the video games, I'm going to use a multiplayer online game. So like Fortnite or World of Warcraft or whatever the shit, you know, kids are playing these days, right? So let's pretend it's an online game. As an employee, you're a player in the game, and your priority is going to be to level up within the game. As a self-employed person, you own a server within the game. So your main focus is going to be to make sure that your server stays up and that players keep coming to it and having a good time. You need to be looking at that server like 24/7 to make sure it doesn't crash. As a business owner, you created the game. You have employed several people that moderate the servers for you, and as long as that game stays up and active and healthy, it's going to generate you a passive income. So you can spend that creating another game, you can spend that doing, you know, your other hobbies, or you can even spend that, you know, creating a festival that's going to scam thousands and thousands of people. A festival that could potentially, you know, ja rule, you know? So then we go into investors. So investors are going to look at a lot of the same stuff as, you know, business owners. They're going to look at, all right, how many players are playing the game? How many times do the servers go down? Overall, what does the future of the game look like? Is it going to be like Star Wars Galaxies, or is it going to be like Elder Scrolls Online or whatever, right? That's going to tell you whether or not you want to keep investing in it, all right? And if you do, if it looks positive, then great. If not, then you just find a different game to invest in, okay? So by knowing where you fit within the system, you can work on your priorities. I know me, for example, I'm an employee. Every company I go to, my priority is to soak up as much experience as I can, and that way if the business goes broke or I end up with an asshole boss, like, it doesn't matter, because I can just leave, start somewhere else, hopefully with the same or best case scenario, better pay than what I was on before. Somebody who's self-employed will have completely different priorities. Their priority might be marketing. They might need to learn a lot more about marketing. They might need to network. They might need to do anything and everything to make sure that their business gets out there. They might even be focusing on, you know, systemizing their processes so as that anybody can come in and do their job, and that way they can make that jump to being a business owner. Business owners, you know, obviously are looking for, you know, ways to make another business or ways to make their business continue to float. That was my phone.
Fired.
I am fired so much. Hold on. I'll keep going. We'll take it from Act 2, right? Investors are obviously looking, you know, at ways to pick out good investments. They're looking at like formulas and stuff like that, yeah? So ways that you can sort of tell if a company is going to be good for your portfolio or not. And that's lesson 3, guys, of the cash flow quadrant. Which is looking at it as a system. That's all of the lessons from this book, guys. I really hope you were able to take something from this video. If you were, please leave a comment down below. If you weren't, please leave a comment down below because we'll be able to get better from your criticism and feedback, right? All in all, I give this book like a 5 out of 10. I don't think it was as juicy as Robert's first book. I think as soon as you know the cash flow quadrant diagram and as soon as you know the narrative associated with that, you can kind of put 2 and 2 together really quickly and do your own research and set your own sort of targets and learning goals, right? Yeah, in terms of picking it up to you guys, up to you, right? If you're in the bookstore, go ahead. If not, right? I've written a lot about it down below, so if you want to check that out, you know, it goes into a bit of a review and a bit more detail. Otherwise, guys, thanks so much for coming along. In the future videos, we're going to look at developing a framework from what we've learned from Robert Kiyosaki's 2 books, and then basically, you know, putting that into action steps for becoming a millionaire by 50. So if you're interested in looking at the employer asset route, which is what we'll be doing, or the employee investor route, which is what we'll be doing for this, please come along, hit that subscribe button, and you'll get the notifications for our next video. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you next time.